There is a version of you that you are actively avoiding becoming right now. Not because it is impossible, not because it is unrealistic, but because it would demand that you let go of the identity you have spent years constructing to feel safe. And the disturbing part is this. The life you say you want is usually located on the other side of the person you are afraid to be. Most people think fear is a signal to stop, a warning that something is wrong. But from a Jungian perspective, fear often appears precisely at the edge of transformation. It shows up when the psyche senses that the current structure of identity is no longer sufficient for the next stage of development. In other words, fear is not always danger. Sometimes it is initiation. Carl Jung believed that within every person there exists a rejected set of traits, potentials, and drives that have been pushed into the unconscious because at some point they threatened belonging, approval, or survival. This is what he called the shadow. The shadow is not only made of aggression or selfishness. It also contains creativity, assertiveness, ambition, independence, sensuality, truthfulness, and courage. Qualities that were once judged unacceptable by family, culture, or authority figures and therefore had to be hidden in order to maintain love or acceptance. The tragedy is that what you hide does not disappear. It waits. And as it waits, it accumulates energy. And eventually that energy begins to leak into your life in indirect ways. Through procrastination, through chronic indecision, through self-sabotage, through unexplained anxiety when facing opportunities, through relationships that seem to collapse when things get serious. Because unconsciously, becoming successful, visible, or powerful would require you to embody traits that your current identity does not allow. Traits that live in the shadow. So you hesitate, you delay, you overthink, you sabotage momentum at the last minute. Not because you do not want the goal, but because achieving it would require you to become someone unfamiliar. Someone you were once told was too much, too intense, too loud, too ambitious, too different. Jung suggested that psychological growth demands a process called individuation, which is the gradual integration of these rejected parts into conscious identity. It means becoming whole rather than becoming acceptable. But the moment you move toward this integration, resistance appears. And that resistance often takes the form of fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of success, fear of losing relationships, fear of standing alone, fear of not recognizing yourself anymore. Because at a deep level, the ego is not designed to evolve. It is designed to preserve continuity, to keep the story of who you think you are stable and predictable, even if that story keeps you small. This is why people remain in jobs that suffocate them, in relationships that limit them, in routines that drain them, in patterns that repeat themselves endlessly, because the unknown version of themselves is more terrifying than the known discomfort they already understand. Becoming who you fear might mean becoming someone who says no without guilt, someone who sets boundaries without apologizing, someone who speaks honestly even if it risks conflict, someone who pursues meaning rather than approval, someone who walks away from what is familiar in order to pursue what is true. And to the unconscious mind, this feels like social death, which historically meant actual death. So the psyche resists, not because it hates your dreams, but because it is trying to keep you safe according to outdated rules. Jung emphasized that what you do not make conscious will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So when you repeatedly miss opportunities, delay decisions, or abandon progress, it often feels as if life itself is conspiring against you. But what is really happening is that your shadow is intervening, protecting the current identity from dissolution, because achieving your goal would demand that you integrate traits you once rejected: confidence, authority, discipline, visibility, independence. And the moment you move toward embodying these traits, you may feel discomfort, anxiety, or even guilt, as if you are betraying an older version of yourself that survived by staying small. This is why real transformation feels disorienting. It does not feel like improvement. It feels like loss. Loss of certainty, loss of approval, loss of belonging to the old narrative. But from Jung's perspective, the task of life is not to remain who you were taught to be. It is to become who you are capable of being. And that requires confronting the shadow, not destroying it, not suppressing it, but integrating it, allowing yourself to access the ambition you once called arrogance, the assertiveness you once called selfishness, the creativity you once called impractical, the leadership you once called bossy. The truth is that your fear often marks the exact direction of your growth. And the life you imagine for yourself is usually built from the very qualities you learn to hide. So the question becomes this: are you willing to risk becoming unfamiliar in order to become fulfilled? Because the person you are afraid to be may be the one who can finally live the life you keep postponing. And the longer you refuse that integration, the more your shadow will continue to express itself indirectly, through avoidance, through distraction, through emotional paralysis, until eventually you are forced to confront what you could have become. Individuation is not comfortable. It is not linear, and it does not guarantee approval. But it offers something far more valuable: coherence between who you are and how you live. And sometimes the greatest risk is not failure, but succeeding as someone you were never meant to remain.